is? It is another Speakeasy podcast where we talk about the behind the scenes of what it is to be the speaker or the author. And, you know, let's talk about this journey, this book writing journey. When we think about the journey, we think about in the beginning, we're just trying to get the words out on paper. Let's be honest. I just want to get the words on paper. I want to get it to a publisher, and then I don't want to be bothered anymore. But there's so many different pieces of the journey that we miss. And I think a big piece of it is get an expert. Find somebody who is a professional that can do certain things when it comes to your book. These are the places and areas where you need a professional when it comes to publishing a top-selling book. You ready? Are you ready? It is an editor, a book cover designer, unless you're creative. Now, if you're a creative, you might be able to handle it on your own. Might is a big word. But editor, a book cover designer, and a coach. And some of you may say, but I don't need a coach to tell me how to write words. I can write words in a book. But the reality is it's so much more than just writing words in a book. There is a technique to writing so that other people understand the story that you're trying to share. So with that being said, I have a special guest for us today. I have Miss Rebecka. Hello, Rebecka.
Hi there.
And Rebecka has, listen, she has a whole lot of years of experience when it comes to writing. 40 years of writing experience. See, this is the thing. Most of you are like, oh, I write at work and I write in school. And when I was in college, I had to write. And it's not the same. It is so not the same. And so let's start off the conversation. First, Rebecka, tell everybody a little bit about you.
Okay. I'm a retired teacher. I taught special education for 22 and a half years, but I have 28 and a half years of teaching behind me. I started writing when I was about 10 years old, which is about 52 years ago. One of my teachers that I had for reading told me that with my imagination, he would see me in print one day, and I believed him. And my parents never discouraged that belief. I started out with poetry. Okay, it doesn't take long to figure out poetry is not going to be best-selling. You write poetry for yourself. My poetry book first came out, let me think, 42 years ago, right after my daughter was born. And I typed it, I edited it, I took it to the printers, and I found somebody who would publish it for me. And it should have sold for about $7.75. I ended up there were 50 copies. It was a hardcover book, and I ended up giving most of them away. I had trouble charging my family for what they had lived with all my life to that point. So when I started teaching and people found out I had this book of poetry, they said, how can we get it? And I said, it's not print anymore. You need to put it in print. And I co-taught with a teacher who would say, can you come up with a poem for this by the time you get here this afternoon? And I would roll my eyes and say, really? I don't write on demand. It doesn't work like that. But I would spend all my in-between minutes between the different things I was teaching during the day, trying to come up with poetry. So when I hit her class in the afternoon, I'd have something. It's not easy. I did put the old poetry book with a new poetry book, and it's called Only a Start and Beyond. The original book was Only a Start. Beyond is what I wrote later in life. And it's currently being retyped, re-edited, and then it will be in print again, probably next year. It's one of those that it actually, when it went to press this time, with a vanity press, we won't go there. It sold 60 copies. I was impressed because it was selling for $10.95. You were getting 2 books in one. But when you look at it, you can actually see the growth of a writer, because the poems in the first book started out when I was 16 years old. And some gal read one of the poems and said, "Isn't that a little harsh?" Because it talked about the changes going on in my lifetime, that, they were burning bras, they were all this free love stuff. I grew up in the 60s. It's like, so yeah, it's not appropriate now as far as things go. It doesn't, but it does reflect the things that were happening at the time. And some of my poems have been used in church sermons. Some of them, one was used for the junior miss pageant when I was a senior in high school. And then somebody who had been in the audience called and asked if he could come and tape record it, because he has had an oral class he was teaching, and he thought I had done an excellent job and he wanted to use it. And I said, "Sure, come on over." So he came to my folks' house and he said, "You don't need paper?" And I said, "Oh no, I have this one memorized," which I did at the time. And I could give it as if the paper were right there in front of me, because I had done it so often for the pageant that I didn't need a paper that night either. So the ones that come later in life, reflections on turning 50, just things that happened as an adult. There's a poem in there about my great-grandmother. And at the time I wrote it, I forget how many grandchildren she had, but she had 4 great-great-grandchildren on the way. And she was gone by this time. She would never know them. And that was my point, is that, these kids will never know what they missed. My great-grandmother was 4'11". She was born in Cornwall, England, and she immigrated here in 1922 with her 3 kids. So yeah, she went the hard life. She scrubbed floors for a living. She ran a boarding house. That was her income. I wrote one about a cousin who died of AIDS, and it was just like, one day he was there and one day he was gone, and there was no funeral. And so I really never got a chance to say goodbye. And he and I were the same age, give or take a few months. I'm a few months older than he was. But I never got to say goodbye. And that hurt, because there was no celebration of his life. So now I write mystery novels for the most part. I do have a children's book called Of Moonbeams and Fairies, Collected Tales by yours truly. It's a 64-page book, black and white illustrations, and it's the book that took me international. It is the one that when I go to a book signing, I take 5 extra copies because I will sell them all. I take 5 copies of each book. That one I take 10. Sometimes, depending on where I'm going, I will take 15. They will sell. They sell to children, they sell to adults, but that's the one that sold in Germany, it sold in the UK, it sold in Australia. And it was amazing to me because I never dreamed it was 64 pages. It wasn't anything. It was just little fairy tales, and poetry, but whimsical poetry that went along with fairy tales. So yeah, I have been the route of going through a vanity press. You never want to do that. I have been out there all alone trying to figure it out. When I was an undergrad, I had a narrative writing class from a well-known poet in Michigan, and she said to me I had oodles of talent. She didn't know how to tell me how to develop it. And I'm going, really? And my parents are paying me to take your class. This is what I'm thinking. You can't help me. So I have read more books on writing and how to write than anyone you know. I started attending conferences. The one I spent 3 years at, went every year for 3 years, was the Midwest Writers Workshop in Muncie, Indiana, sponsored by Ball State University. And let me tell you, I learned more in the 1-day intensive and the 2 days after that than I learned from any book. And I met some amazing people along the way. My big treat to myself was I spent a week at the Iowa Summer Writing Festival. If you get a chance to go. You can go all 6 weeks. You can go the 6 weeks plus the weekends. You can go just for a weekend, or you can go for a week. I chose a week. It's a $525 conference, or it was when I went 8 years ago. It's probably $600 by now. Your classes are all in the evening, which surprised me, but it gave you plenty of time to network, meet other people, bounce your ideas off them, and spend time writing what your assignment was. It was awesome. And I would go again if I thought I needed to, but right now I don't. I took a class on short stories while I was there because I've always written a novel, the big picture. I never knew I could write short stories. I never knew I could write flash fiction. I've written a flash fiction piece that's 500 words. And it's the whole story in 500 words. I was totally amazed at what I learned and how it's made my writing crisper, because in 500 words, you don't get a lot of time for detail. And that's something you know. As far as editors, my mom used to edit for me. She was a reading specialist. She taught school for 34 years. And she used to read for me. And then when she'd get the book, she'd say, I've already read this. I'm going, well, yeah, Mom, but you got the book now. My daughter read for me for a while, but she's kind of busy these days, has a full-time job. And then she has this part-time job that is the love of her life. She coaches gymnastics, high school gymnastics, junior high gymnastics, and junior ram gymnastics, which is the third grade to 6th grade group. Junior high is her 7th and 8th grade, and then her high school girls, 7th and 8th grade, and the high school girls compete. And she does mini meets for her junior rams so they get an idea of what competition is like. And this year, she had a gymnast who went to the state meet. Yes. First time in a few years that she's gone. And she had one gymnast go. She took 10 with her as support for this one young lady who ended up placing tied for 9th on, I want to say, the uneven bars. So not bad for a first time out. And I give them lots of credit. But that is my daughter's first love. She did gymnastics. between the ages of 8 and 12. And then we moved to a place that they said, Jim who? And so she didn't do them again. And my granddaughter started doing them at the age of 4. And by the time she was 5, she was competing. And she competed from the time she was 5 until she was 10 in club gymnastics. And then she said it wasn't fun. Well, no, it wasn't. She was spending 20 hours a week in the gym. It's not fun when you're 10 years old to not be able to hang with your friends and not to have any friends outside of the gym. So she stopped doing it. But when her mom started as assistant coach, she was in 8th grade. So she would go over and work out with the girls. And the girls got real mad at her when she would go to basketball practice. She played basketball one year and got tired of the fact that these girls are going, oh, I broke a nail. And she's going, for crying out loud, it's basketball. You're going to break a nail. Live with it. But she ended up walking on as a freshman onto the team in high school and did gymnastics the next 4 years. Her senior year, junior and senior year were her roughest years. She injured her ankle in the spring of her sophomore year and ended up having to have surgery. And so she could not compete the way she had competed in the past. She did vault and floor after that. She did not try beam or the bars. But she was always a top floor scorer and a top vaulter, which helped the team. So, and I do think she took a team to the state meet one year. Megan's junior or senior year. But anyway, aside from that, I do have editors. They get paid in copies of my book, and they don't seem to mind. And they all have some sort of education background. Imagine that. I have a small publishing company, 4 authors at the moment. One of them is 93 years old and legally blind. So formatting her stuff is really fun. I have never charged my authors for editing. I just do it and send it to them and say, these are my suggestions. Do what you want with them. I have one author whose first book was sensational, and the second book, she didn't have any dialogue. Hello. Dialogue is vital to your story. I don't care what anybody says. If you're doing a narrative of about 700 to 1,000 words, you don't need dialogue, okay? Any more than 1,000 words, and you got to have dialogue. It moves your story forward, and it makes your characters well-rounded. And without it, you're sunk. If you think you're going to tell a story in 300 pages without any dialogue, let me tell you right now, it's not going to sell. It's a waste of your time and money. There has to be some dialogue. Now, it's a little different if you're writing nonfiction because you don't always have dialogue in nonfiction. So biographies are a little different. Memoirs are a little different. But general fiction, mystery, sci-fi, fantasy, if you don't have some kind of dialogue, you're dead in the water. Okay? So she got mad at me because I asked her to put dialogue in, and she says, well, can't you just do it? And I said, no, because that would make me part of the author of your book, and you know how it should sound. I don't. I can't write your words. Well, finally she did, and we got to the last chapter, and she said, what more do I have to do? And I said, absolutely nothing. I'm done. Because by chapter 19, I was done editing. If it was wrong, it was wrong. Which is a really sad commentary. Working with family is a number one no-no.
Ooh, yes, that's a big one right there.
Yeah, and she's family. And I love her dearly. And her second book was good when she started putting dialogue in it, because then it moved. Before it was stagnant. So, I have an author who is young, in her 30s, who has cerebral palsy and Tourette's. And let me tell you about this young lady. She writes sci-fi. And she writes well. And she has made herself available for book signings at Starbucks. She finally got into Barnes & Noble and one book sold. I said, don't worry about it. Barnes & Noble didn't want you there to begin with, so they didn't advertise it. They're just being obstinate. Starbucks will let her come anytime she wants. They don't charge her. She's in charge of her own money. She takes 10 books with her, and she sells 5 to 6 each time she goes.
Now that's an interesting, setup, because people always get it twisted and they think that I published a book, so now I have to do this really big book signing. And I tell people all the time, you waste money trying to fit what everybody else does. Oh, everybody else does this book signing at a bookstore. Everybody else does, everybody goes to Barnes and Noble. Everybody does not go to Barnes and Noble.
My favorite place to sign books is a used bookstore in Frankenmuth, Michigan. High traffic area because it is a tourist town. And the couple who own it, I've known him for years. She's his second wife. I love her dearly. And they just tell me, let me know when your next book is out. We'll fit you in. I go in and I rarely leave without making about $150. They run it all through their cash register. I don't have to worry about sales tax or handling money. All I have to do is talk to people and sign books. And that's what it's all about, is networking. The first time I was there, I had a little girl come up and say, how old do you have to be to start writing? And I looked at her and I said, I was 10, maybe 11. I was 5th grade. So there's no age limit on it. None at all. If you're a 10-year-old and you want to write, start writing. The people that make me crazy are the people who are 40 years old and have decided, I'm going to write a book. Okay, what do you know about writing a book? I don't know anything. And it's scary because they think because they read, they can write, which is not necessarily true. It just doesn't work. My 4th author is a part-time professor at Oakland University in Michigan, and wrote what we put as speculative fiction, but I really think it's literary fiction. Not only did she write this book, she translated it into Romanian.
Oh, wow.
And then, of course, our friends at Amazon, through CreateSpace, they don't sell to Romania, so they don't have that as a language. So my publisher is also my designer for Lilac Publishing because he likes me. And what he did is he took pictures of every page and that we loaded it in that way so they didn't have to worry about typeface or anything like that. And we did it for both paperback and ebook. And they notified me about 6 months ago that the ebook was coming down because they did not support that language. They didn't even know what it was. But when she goes out to sell, there's a big Romanian population in the Detroit area where she lives. And she goes to every Romanian festival there is.
Mm-hmm.
And now she can take them in both languages. And she has family who often visit Romania who will take the Romanian copies with them and sell them for her while they're over there. Vanity presses. Used to be able to go to, editorsandpredators.com and find out who was good and who was not so good. They have gone out of business, which is a shame. Now I go to Writer Beware, which is the sci-fi organization, and they put this out. And it's writerbeware.org, I think. But they will tell you who to avoid and why. Ex Libris, Tate Publishing. There's another one. Author House. Author House makes me absolutely crazy. And when I first was going to Muncie for the workshop, Author House had a representative there. And a gentleman got up and he spoke about his issues with getting a book published. He'd written it for his grandchildren. And it was going to cost him $1,000. And next thing they know, they're telling him it's now going to cost him $3,000. He needs another $2,000. A year later, it's going to cost him $5,000. And yet, he's yet to see a book. After that, Author House no longer had a representative at that workshop. Imagine that. Folks, you don't have to pay like that to get a book published. And if you are, you're being robbed. Create Space, which is Amazon, which has worldwide distribution. Does not cost you a thing. You still need an editor. You still need it formatted. You still need a book designer. The book designer will be your biggest cost, and it will run anywhere from about $300 to $600, depending on whether or not you have interior and exterior. Okay? You can upload it to Amazon through CreateSpace. They'll give you a CreateSpace ISBN number, but that will prevent it from being in Barnes & Noble. Bowker used to sell 10 ISBNs for $250. I don't believe they do that anymore, which is a shame. I bought my first 10 through them. And that was like, just hand it off to my publisher and say, go. Originally, my books were published through Lilac Publishing. My publisher has now become a mid-sized press. He has about 67 authors. And we are now published under him. My books are published under him, which is fine. I don't care. Cost me the same amount either way. I pay for the book design. So, and I've never had a book design that I sent back. I love them all.
And that's saying a lot, because we know that when you're doing this book journey and you have somebody that really doesn't know you trying to do a book design for you, I often see that authors coming in, they really don't know how to describe what it is they actually want to see on the front of their book.
Yes. And I've been lucky in that it used to be they had time to read through all of our novels. One or the other of them did, but he's gotten so big now that he can't do that. But he read through my last one because it was different than anything I had written. I took a class on the internet from James Patterson. Cost me $99. And so I stopped my current work in progress to do this class. And the book that came out of it, according to my readers, is the best book I've ever written. So that's a big thing. I also went back and gutted 20,000 words out of my work in progress to make it a better book using what I'd learned. I teach classes on writing. I have a beginning class coming up in July. That's $100 for 16 weeks. I'm currently teaching a Start Your Novel class. It was $150, and we are in the 5th week of an 18-week class. I have a budget marketing class coming up in April, 6 weeks for $99, but all the things you need to know about how to market your book without spending thousands and thousands of dollars. There are free ways to do it. There are simple ways to do it. And as long as you know what your budget is, you can work with it. But the idea is that you will have a marketing budget when you're done, and you will have ways to spend that marketing budget that will benefit your sales.
And see, that's the benefit of working with someone who has this amount of experience. When you have someone that has multiple books that they have published, when you have someone that has published books for other authors, when you have somebody that has this experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because we know it's not all pretty when you're publishing a book. When you have somebody that has all this experience, now you can sit down and breathe a little easier because, okay, I'm not worried about who's going to be, who's going to scam me. I'm not worried about what's going to go on with the editing. I'm not worried. Like it blew me away with you saying that you do the editing automatically. It's not like an extra fee. It's not like something that you have to, no, it's already something that is included because we know that no book should go out without editing.
Exactly. Even my own don't go out with it. I did that once. I sent the wrong copy to my publisher and it came out and I'm going, what the heck? There were 183 errors. It was the unedited copy. It cost me $50 and a few days sale because he took it down and he worked on it for 2 days. And so then it had to go back up. And it's like, really? How does this happen? So now I'm very, very careful about which ones I send. I do not charge my authors. There is no upfront fee. If you are paying an upfront fee, you most likely have a vanity press. I have a contract that reads that you get 60% of your royalties and I take 40%. I have 2 authors whose first 2 books have paid for themselves. So now any royalty I take is actually money coming into the business. And all the money gets turned back into the business. Because if I sell your book, or it sells on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or wherever it sells, those checks come to me. When you have $20 or $30, depending on whether you opt for a check or PayPal, I have to put money in your PayPal account at $20. At $30, I have to cut you a check. So all goes into one account that is separate from my others. I use it strictly for the business. And I have to keep track of that. And now it's making me crazy because I also have to keep track of what's coming in from my coaching, which is different. And because that doesn't get paid out to anyone but me. And it's right now just going in to the whole company. So yeah. And Altavis, if you've got anybody who's got questions, tell them to ask.
Well, definitely, you guys can start putting questions that you have into the comments. I haven't seen any come in so far. They've been listening into the conversation because I've been posting little tidbits into the comments. But you know, it's always a battle. And sometimes it feels like an uphill battle. Sometimes it feels like a battle where you're well prepared. And other times it just feels like a battle that you want to run away from. And, you know, when you're going into it, you never know what it's going to feel like as soon as you step into it. You have to be doing the work. You have to be moving forward. You have to be writing on a consistent basis, or, you know, you have to be doing something. And I love that you said that even you as a publisher, you still go and you get training. You still go and take classes. You still go to events. I always tell people that, listen, anybody that you invest in, they should still be investing in something else. They should be investing in their business, in their growth as well. Because if they're not, then how do you know that the things that they're teaching you or the things you're paying for is up to date?
The other thing I need to tell you is if you're going to self-publish, you don't want people to know you've self-published. Go to Fiverr and have them make you a logo for whatever you want your logo to be for all your books. Have whoever designs your books, and you can use Fiverr for that. Have them put this logo on the back, along with your ISBN number. Then go through CreateSpace and make sure that your pages are on cream paper, not white. Cream is easier to read than black and white. Then when you're published, you have your own logo. Mine is, I've got it right here. Right there. Lilac Publishing. Okay. This is my starting a novel book. It sells for a whopping $10.95 because you can see it's like really not very thick. We put these through Lilac Publishing and not through BHC Press because they're writing books. They're not novels. They're not poetry. They're not children's. They're not self-help. So we put them through Lilac Publishing. Does that mean that they can go to Barnes & Noble? Sure does. So, you know, it's up to you what you want to do and how much you want to make out of it. I do my best sales when I'm live and in person. Make friends with your local librarian, for crying out loud. Make her your new best buddy or him, because if you want to do a book signing, that's the ideal place to do one. It doesn't cost you anything. Always offer them 20% of your sales and a signed copy of your book or books that they can keep in the library. I went to my first book signing. They refused the 20%. They would take copies of the book. So copies of the books they got. All signed, and it just said enjoy, and I signed it. That's all it took. I went to another library whose director of book signings insisted that I had to give them 20%, which was not a problem for me. And I wrote the check for, I don't know, $24 or $26 and something. So there were $260 worth of sales. And we packed the library that night because it was close to my hometown. and it was the town that my daughter grew up in. So we lived there for a while. So it was like coming home, and everybody wanted to be there because they hadn't seen us in forever. And it was a good turnout. The library got copies of each one of my books, all signed. And I got a card from the Friends of the Library who said their goal is to promote reading. And to promote reading, you have to promote authors, and they would not accept. I had fulfilled my obligation by writing the check. They were returning it to me. So, make friends with the librarians. I have just moved back to Michigan. I am not in a locale that I have ever lived in before. And I am working on finding time to meet the local librarians and talk to the local librarians. Two of my authors are not that far away. They could do book signings. I could do a book signing. I could talk to their teen writing group that they have. I have no problem with that. Let's go. So we'll see what happens. I have not ventured out in the winter weather to do that. My bad. I will do that. It's on my list of things to do, because I think librarians are a resource we forget we have. When I'm researching, where do I spend my time? In the library, because I can't get everything online, and what I get online can't always be verified. So to the library I go, where I can get things that are verified, especially if I'm writing something historical that needs to be, or I need to know about weapons of a certain era. Yeah, libraries. Where else would you go? Besides, they're free. They let you read the books for free. Why wouldn't you go there? Number one place to have a book signing is a library. I have two, one in West Branch and one in Rose City, that I can call them up and say, hey, got a new book out. Want me to come up for a book signing? And usually the answer is yes, and we work out a time. I do evening ones up there for the most part. After the library is closed for regular hours, so I'm not interfering with the day-to-day work of the library. And they do it on special occasions. Tuesday nights are not real busy, so let's bring some people in on Tuesday night. And the Friends of the Library always make treats, and there's something there for people to munch on. It's great because people can ask questions. And the number of people who have never met a real author is amazing. I mean, I was in Frankenmuth one year at Christmas time, and the guy came through, and his wife and daughters were, wait a minute, did you write all these books? Yes, sir, I did. That is amazing. And he filled out the form that I had, because I was giving away a basket of books as a Christmas gift, and it was just going to be a drawing. And I was going to let the owner of the store draw, which I did. And my cousin ended up winning, and she called me a day later and said, you should have drawn somebody else because I've already got all your books. I'm going, okay. But by then it was too late. So, I'll just get it ready for another time. But, it was a big basket. It was worth $150. I wasn't cheating anybody. But when he came out, he made his wife and daughter stop because I was a real author. And they'd never met a real author. And that's fascinating. And when I talk to kids love it. They think it's great that I'm an author. Well, he's not really a student. I had his sisters, okay, but I knew who he was. And he's gone into the military, and his mom said he was homesick. And I said, shoot me his address. I'll send him a letter. I said, I might not be the person he wants to hear from, but I'll send him a letter. He was so excited. He never knew I wrote books. It had never been something he knew. Well, when his youngest sister was in 4th grade, my second book came out. It was a novella, and it was called Out of the Flames. And I had the proof copy, which I go through and I mark up like crazy things that have to be fixed. And I could show the kids how I had marked it up, because I used either navy blue or purple or green to mark up so that I know what has to be changed. And the kids, and we read the story to the kids. Now, it was for adults, but there was nothing in it the kids could not hear. It had to do with arson. And when I started this book, what I knew about arson would fit on the tip of that pen. But my daughter and I had a friend who was a firefighter. And I called her up. I said, what can you tell me about arson? And she says, Ma, I just finished a class in arson. Let me bring you my books and my notebook and my notes. I'll be over in about an hour, because there's a website you need to go to. And I'm going, all right, I found a website. She comes over. She's got a book this thick. She's got a 4-inch notebook. And then she's got her notes. So I took 3 months away from writing the book to learn about arson, to make it work in my book. And she says, oh, and did you say you had a website? I said, yeah, let me show it to you. Ma, that's the website we need. So I had already found the website, just doing a web search. And it was wonderful. And when the book came out, she got a copy, and in the back, it acknowledged that she helped me. Because that's what you do for people. You give them a copy if they've helped you, and you acknowledge them. I did the same with my first book, because I had to call the local sheriff, who was a friend, and ask him about sentencing on some of the people who were being convicted in my first novel. So I signed it and took it into him, and in the back, I had acknowledged his help. I also add that the legal stuff is just what I've picked up. It's not authentic, as far as I haven't had it verified for being, but I pretty much know what the procedure is. I do have a Black Laws dictionary that I consult when I'm not sure what certain papers are for, like a habeas corpus or a writ of something or an affidavit. Those words I've got to know. And so I bought the Black Laws dictionary to do that. It's amazing. It's amazing to me that people go out and write and don't know anything. I don't understand how you do that. Target of Vengeance had to do with stalking. And it was actually revenge gone haywire is what it was. But it basically had to do with stalking. I knew about stalking. I had been stalked. My daughter had been stalked. I knew about stalking. When I started the Macy McVaniel series, the first book, River's Edge, took a 16-year-old cold case, and you had to solve it. Okay, you had a 20-year-old guy who was killed, or 19-year-old guy who was killed. And this is 16 years later. First, you got to find everybody. Well, as she was finding people, they ended up dead. So she knew she was hitting the right keys and things to find out who it was that had killed. But it also was the groundbreaking story to introduce the town, the people, the fact that she was a female detective in an old boys network. You know, the old boys in small towns, they do it. And it's hard to be a female and break in. Doesn't matter what your nationality is or what your race is. The fact that you're female, it's hard. And it's still hard in 2018 to break in to the police force, because the police force is still an old boys network. And those that do break in, persevere. They put up with all the nonsense and they persevere.
They definitely do. And, you know, that takes me right into the next piece is that, you know, every time I have an author on, I always ask the question, what has been a blunder for you? You know, in this journey, we have, you know, some things that they just go way left. They don't work out at all. We go, what was I thinking? How did I do that? But now that we can look back on it, it's like, okay, it's a lesson learned, but not only a lesson for us, but a lesson that we teach our clients as well.
I think I was writing a book called Who's Watching Willow, and it came out of a writing group that I went to that disbanded. I was brokenhearted when they did, because I looked forward to my every other Thursday driving north and spending a couple hours with these people and then staying at my folks' cabin and driving back to work Friday morning because I was all geeked up about writing. But I was writing this book called Who's Watching Willow, based on the word paranoia. And I really thought that Willow was being followed and that it wasn't really paranoia. Until it got into where I needed to put her in the witness protection program, and I didn't know anything about it. I do have a book on the witness protection program and how it works, but the story stopped. It just didn't work for me at that point. I still have this story. It's not gone away. It needs to be written, but it needs to be written from an entirely different angle, and just leave witness protection out of it. Because Willow is Native American from the reservations out west at the Four Corners. And so I did a lot of research on that to make that authentic. But I think some other things have to happen to make this more of her being paranoid than of her actually being stalked. So, you know, back to the drawing board with that one. And it's still back there. And every now and then I pull it up and go, what do we need to cut? What do we need to keep? And so far, I've not cut anything. It's all been kept. But I need to seriously look at it, because it's a book that needs to be written. And while I'm working on the Macy series, I really don't have time to look at another book. I've written some short stories in there. I'm pulling together a collection of short stories. I need 3 or 4 more to go with it. Some are flat. Some are fiction. They're about 3,500 words or 5,000 words or maybe 6,000 words. And they have been made into ebooks, which I sell for 99 cents. Broken Chains is one of them. The Air is one of them. And my first and so far only romance, What the Storm Blew In, is one of them. So there are 3 books right there for the collection. I've written one called Predator. I've written one called Stalker. And I've written the 700-word one. I think it's 700, maybe it's 5. The Unused Cradle. So, you know, I'm working on it. And it's just when I need a break from something and something really hits me that I can whip out fast, that's when I do those. But I'm in book 4 of the Macy series. And they're crying for it. It should have been out 2 years ago, but I stopped to do the James Patterson class, and it's not out yet. Book 5 is percolating, and book 5 will be based loosely on an incident that impacted me greatly. I had retired, and somebody that I worked with got a hold of me and said, so-and-so is being arrested. And I said, oh my gosh, what did they embezzle? And he said, nothing. Well, it was somebody who had their hands in the concessions and the teacher pop money and the teacher building money and the band money. And so I was pretty sure it was embezzlement. When the story broke, he was a pedophile. And I kept going, please, God, let this not have been on my watch. Wrong again. So my next was, please, God, let it not be a child I knew. Not only was it a child I knew, his mother was my parapro, my right hand. And I look back on it where she came to me and she said, I don't understand what's going on with my son. I don't know what to do. And I told her to go talk to this teacher because the teacher was her son's mentor. And he said to her, I can't imagine anything being wrong with him. Well, the thing was, he had threatened to get his mom fired if he said a word. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare, and it was a divided school district. 2 different communities came together to make a whole. And this happened in the smaller half of the district. And they were closing the middle school at the end of that year anyway, and the middle school teachers were going to be transferred to the bigger middle school because all the kids were going there. And then at the time of sentencing, because this guy decided he would plead guilty, 6 teachers wrote letters of support saying he should be given leniency. And they all knew him as, a great teacher and good with kids. And that divided both towns. Those that still supported the teacher, even though he pled guilty, and those that were livid about the letters. And the judge reamed the teachers right in the courtroom. And the letters were made public. They were part of public record. So yeah, the public got a hold of them. And the people in the other part of the district didn't want these teachers teaching their kids. And the kids that were being transferred in, some of those parents didn't want the teachers teaching those kids. And 2 of the teachers had retired, so they weren't an issue. 2 of the teachers were at the high school, and one was a school board member's wife. They wouldn't reprimand them because they said it was a First Amendment right to write the letters. And I said, wrong. It's a First Amendment right to write the letters. But once they signed that they are teachers in this district, they are representing the district, and that's disciplinary action. None was taken, but 2 of the teachers had no more than 6 students in their classroom at any one time, because those 6 parents were okay with it. These same teachers would go down and visit him in prison and tell him how things were going. One of the 6 was his then wife. She divorced him. Her ex-husband came back from Ireland to take custody of their daughter because he was not having his daughter live with a pedophile. Well, once she divorced him, she got her daughter back. But it was a mess. And there are still hurt feelings over this. The parents of the young man who was involved woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning because somebody firebombed their garage. Thankfully, the garage was detached from the house. And it was terrible. She ended up being moved from middle school to elementary school because the middle school teachers were harassing her and telling her they wanted to talk to her son because this was a big mistake. It made the national news. She was on Glenn Beck. They were on Anderson Cooper. I mean, it was a big thing. And then this teacher, because he had to resign, wanted his $10,000 for leaving education early. That's when the state of Michigan stepped in and said, I ain't getting it. And the Michigan Education Association said, he ain't getting it. Because if he had been awarded it, it would have gone to the state to pay for him being in jail. As it was, they took half of her income, his wife's, anything that they had joint, anything that he had put in her name, half of that all went to the state, which is why she divorced him, because she was not able to maintain her house and daughter, losing all that money. So she just signed off everything and said it's gone. So that will be the last one in the series. And that one is going to be the hardest one to write because it touched home. And his parents have said, you will do an outstanding job and you will write it fairly. And I said, what I'm going to do is give him an entirely different position. And there are going to be more than one student that comes forward or that is discovered. We know there are other students that he molested over the years, but they won't come forward.
And that just goes to show the power within being an author and being able to tell not just our story, but being able to tell somebody else's story, being able to shed light on things that other people, kind of whisper and ask questions behind closed doors about, that you're able to put it out there in the forefront and say, okay, this is what really goes on. This is how it really tears apart. Not just one family, but every family involved, every person who's ever been connected. And I think that that's major, because even when we see the whole Me Too movement right now, we think people still think, oh, well, it happened so long ago, it shouldn't affect as many people. They should have been over it by now, but that's not the case.
That's not the case, because look at all the girls that came forward at the Larry Nassar trial and talked about the abuse. Here's the sad thing. I know a lot of those girls. Jordan Weber and my granddaughter were in the same gym together. And I've known Jordan since she was 8. And my granddaughter was 6. And when she went to the Olympics, I posted my $1 million picture. My granddaughter, John Geddert, and Jordan Weber. I also think John Geddert should be in jail because he knew. And he still allowed it to happen by giving him access to. My granddaughter went to Larry Nassar. Never without both her parents. Other than when she hurt her ankle and he was checking on it after surgery. But by then, she was 17. She was too old for him. If she'd stayed at the gym, she might have been in trouble. But she did not. But I know some of the girls that spoke, and that broke my heart. Some that were not Olympians, but were excellent athletes and all around good kids. You know, I understand this. But I don't understand him. And I think a lot of heads should have rolled at MSU. They've got a guy who's been on the board for 30 years. I said, if his name comes up for re-election, I'm voting for anybody but him. Because he said, it's just a moment. My daughter had t-shirts printed because my niece is a graphic designer, and she checked with several of the girls because she knows 27 of them at least. And they're aqua, which is the Me Too movement's colors, but it says hashtag it's not a moment, hashtag it's a movement. And on the back are all the girls that spoke in Ingham County and Eaton County. And in Eaton County, when the dad went after him, I know that dad. He's calm, meek, mild, not somebody who would do that. And somebody said, why didn't everybody else in the courtroom go after him? And I said, they were so stunned that Randy would do this that they didn't know what to do. Because if they'd thought he was going to do something like this, because 3 of his daughters were molested. I mean, you know, that's a little bit much. And I knew the 2 that were in court that day, though I don't know the older one. But their mom, now if she'd have gone over, nobody would have been surprised. But she's a kickboxing expert. And it would have taken a lot more to hold that tiny little woman down than it did her husband. Because she'd have taken a few of them out on the way. Because she's got medals and trophies, and she's really into it. And she went into it for exercise more than anything. But she didn't expect her husband to do that either, because it's not the kind of guy he is. But the t-shirts that all sold for $15, and I think she's out of them now, all went to a fund for the girls for whatever type of counseling they feel they need, or for whatever will help them move past this. But it's like, yeah, words are powerful.
Yeah, they are. They definitely are. I said, we have the power to share the stories that need to be heard. And I know that, when we look at the different genres of, writing and the things that you can hear, the stories that are being told, it's saying, it's not just sci-fi, it's not just poetry, it's not just romance, it's so many other stories. And be it fiction or nonfiction, it is still a story that is connected to somebody in some way, somehow. There's literally, I think every book out there has somebody that can look at the book and say, yeah, I understand some piece of this. Or, I know somebody like that. I know somebody who's been through that type of situation.
Oh, exactly. And I think a piece of who I am gets into every book. When I'm waiting for them to finally come and get to my house, it's like I'm waiting on the birth of a baby. And each new one is just as exciting as the first one. Because it's, did I do a better job? Will people really like this one? I have my junior high band director has every one of my books. And he says every one of these should be a made-for-television movie. He said every one of them is a today story that needs to be told. And so, you know, from his lips to God's ears, no one's approached me from Hollywood, so
At least not yet.
whatever.
Not yet. It's coming.
Well, and when it does, I'll be ready for it. I mean, I have a friend who writes, and I love his books. John Gilstrap writes Jonathan Grave mysteries. And John worked in D.C. So he's got a lot of inside stuff that he knows that I don't. But he's worked very closely with Navy SEALs because his character is a former Navy SEAL. And so that makes it even better. They even made a coin for Jonathan Grave. And so I spent $20 on the coin because I knew like 10 of it was going to help our wounded warriors. I'm all for that. Anything that will help them. But John has a YouTube channel, and he was talking about movie rights. And he's given, when you give movie rights, you lose the rights. And that's something people don't know. You lose all say in what happens. He's got two. He's been approached by. They're not the Jonathan books. They're two of his earlier novels. And they've never gone anywhere. Eventually they'll revert back to him, but right now, no.
And you know, I think at this point when, like right now, because Netflix has played such a huge part in people being able to do, and Netflix is like Amazon for movies and shows. Netflix is Amazon for movies and shows. And so we see, like we saw James Patterson, Zoo. We saw the Zoo episodes on Netflix. I knew it was on regular television as well, but I feel as though they should bring it back. Hello, I think they should bring it.
No, my favorites are Michael Connelly's Harry Bosch series, and Amazon Prime picked those up, and they let Michael Connelly actually direct them.
Wow.
I've watched all of the first 3 seasons. Please come out with season 4 because I love them. I loved the books, and the character is right for the books. I've had email discussions with Lee Child because no way in the world is Tom Cruise Jack Reacher. Jack Reacher is 6'3", blonde hair, blue eyes, and 230 pounds with fists that are like meat, you know? Sorry, Tom Cruise does not meet that. Couldn't you find an unknown actor and do that? Because they just sold out. I refuse to watch them. Not on Netflix, not in the theater. They're not the right character. Michael Connelly, on the other hand, has Tyler Wellington? Titus Wellington. He's Harry Bosch. He is everything Harry Bosch should be. Complete with his flaws. I love it.
I really think that's really like where the industry is going right now, with everybody kind of moving away from traditional television and traditional movies, and everybody's moving away from traditional. I kind of see a lot more authors being able to have that outlet of creating their own story, their own show.
Craig Johnson, who wrote the Longmire series, and Netflix picked it up when A&E got rid of it. And I've watched all 7 seasons, and I think they're going to end it, and I'm heartbroken because I love those characters. All right, Lou Diamond Phillips, yeah, we like him a lot. I found a movie the other day where he didn't even get credits until the very end, but he couldn't have been more than 18 years old in the movie. And I mean, it's like, wow. Not what I expected at all when I turned on this movie, is to say, wait a minute, that's Lou Diamond Phillips. I don't remember ever seeing him on film that young. So it's like, yeah. But the guy who played Walt Longmire, and I can't remember his name, he just did a wonderful job of it. I mean, all the characters were true to what they should have been. And that's what makes and breaks it. And Lee Child was looking for a name. Well, yeah, he found one. He found Tom Cruise, but you can't stretch Tom Cruise to be 6'3". He is no way a blonde, and he's not a big guy. Really? Wasn't there a WWF person available?
I was just about to say it. That's horrible, right? I was just about to say there is a WWE star that fits it.
There has to be,
through and through. And that's another thing, is that you do see some of these other stars coming from other industries, and they're coming in, and I think The Rock did a phenomenal job.
Oh yeah. Who's the other one? There's another one. He does a lot of military shows. And
John Cena.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
He would have made him much better.
Yes. John Cena has come in on the scene and done some amazing things. There's a few of them that have literally have done that whole crossing over, and they've done a great job at it. Hey.
Oh, Hulk Hogan used to cross over and did a good job of it. Don't know where he is these days, but he's not doing much of anything.
So you guys heard it first. Make sure you be on the lookout for a show by Rebecka on Netflix. Cause I might have to tag Netflix on this episode to say,
yeah, there you go,
that this is what needs to happen, and that they need to bring Zoo back, please.
Yeah.
It's bad when you get into a story and you have so many stories now that it's like, okay, they do one season and then they cut it. They do 2 seasons and then they cut it. But then you have some where it's like they do 3 and 4 seasons and they cut it. And you're like, no.
Exactly. I fell on one, Jack something. He's an Irish cop turned PI, only they don't really have PIs in Ireland. He's got a drinking problem. He's not perfect, but he's good at what he does. And after season 3, there were no more. And I'm going, really?
And then they just leave you off at this like strange point. You're just like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know how you did that, but if there's more books, there should be more shows. Get it together.
Yeah, really. It's like, start doing it right. Find somebody else to play Jack Reacher. There's at least 21 of those that could be made into movies.
Listen, guys, if you haven't done so already, share out the broadcast. We greatly appreciate it. I have Miss Rebecka Vigus on for today, and she is an author. She is a publisher with Lilac Publishing. And, you know, with just so much wealth of information and resources, she gave you guys so much information during this broadcast today that you need to go back and listen to it on your way to work, on your lunch break, and take down some notes from doing events with local bookstores, doing events with local libraries, even how to get into your local library. She did some great information about that as well. And guys, you know that literally if you are an author or a speaker, I would love to have you on the platform. bit.ly/speakeasy podcast is how you can become a guest. That's bit.ly/speakeasy podcast, all lowercase, and you can choose a day and time that works for you. Until next time, guys. Oh no, I can't leave yet because Rebecka, you got to tell them where they can find you on social media.
Oh my goodness. Facebook, Rebecka Vigus, Rebecka Vigus author, and Lilac Publishing all have pages on Facebook. LinkedIn, Rebecka Vigus. So you should be able to find me on all kinds of social media at Rebecka Vigus on Twitter. I do have a Twitter account. I'm not into Instagram yet, guys. I can only do so much technology at a time, and Instagram's a little bit out of my league. I do Periscope. Rebecka Vigus 1, I believe, is the Periscope handle. I'm there. And I need to get back to doing that on a regular basis. I've kind of slipped up here since I moved. It's not been as consistent as I'd like it to be. But
that's all right. We know it gets like that with podcasting. Well, with podcasting, with live streaming, it's like one thing sometimes can knock you off track, and then you got to get back into the flow of it. So I can definitely understand that.
Yeah. Well, I got real sick after Christmas, and I spent the last couple of months trying to get myself back into shape, which is why I walked almost 5 miles this morning before we podcasted. I've been mall walking, and I didn't get there till 11:30, and I didn't get home until like 1:45, and I'm going, oh my God, I have to do this. So we have a no makeup day. Sorry about that, guys. I do generally put on some kind of makeup for podcasting. This was not one of those days because I had to get home and let 3 dogs out of a crate so they could go outside and do their business and come back and have lunch so that they would be good and quiet because they're all sleeping right now. And I can see all 3 of them from where I'm at. But I have to be good to them. But yeah, I didn't get up as early as I had planned. And so I was running on full tilt to get back here. But I have 4.9 miles, and I will get that other 1/10 of a mile and be 5 miles before the day is over. That is my big plan. So thanks everybody who listened in.
Yes, they were commenting, so you can go back and connect with them in the comments. And guys, you guys know I love the replay viewers because we always come back and connect with you. And no matter what platform you're listening to this on, it could be on iTunes, it could be on Spreaker, it can be on iHeartRadio. Definitely make sure that you hit the subscribe button so that way you can get future broadcasts. Oh, also on YouTube. And if you're catching it on LinkedIn, I appreciate you guys as well. So with that being said, I love you guys. And until next time, don't forget to press it out.